Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd join me as we get this regular board meeting of April 5th, 2016 together and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise and join me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Roll call for the regular village board meeting, April 5th, 2016. Trustee Maher. Here. Trustee Grady. Here. Trustee Panito. Trustee Vandenberg.
Present.
Trustee Yunker.
Here.
Trustee Brady.
We have a quorum. At this time, I would like to ask for a motion to open a public hearing to review the proposed 2017 fiscal year budget. May I have such a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Trustee Maher, it's yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, with comments from the Budget Audit and Administration Committee, I'd like to start with having the treasurer. Hello?
Mine's on.
Hello? Hello? How's that one? Better?
Now you're on.
All right, I don't want to hear about how low-tech I am. At this time, I'd ask the treasurer to present a brief slide presentation on the budget. Brad, if you will.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, tonight, the public hearing tonight is to present the fiscal 2017 budget. Ryan, if you'd flip to the next page there, we have a quick summary of the total budget of all the village funds. The general fund has a budgeted expenditures of $51,794,396. The water and sewer operating fund has a budget expenditure budget of $24,162,728. The commuter parking operating and maintenance fund is got a expenditure budget of $476,125. All of the main operating funds have a positive balance in that revenues equal or exceed the expenditures. The total expenditure budget for all of the village funds is $138,537,256. The library's budget encompasses expenditures of $5,972,860 for a total of all governmental components of $144,510,116. You can flip to the next, Ryan. Thank you. The general fund budget is projecting revenues of $52,120,353, which is 0.6% greater than the budget for the current year. Expenditures that I previously noted of $51,794,396 is 4.4% greater than the current year budget. The current fiscal year is expected to end with a excess of revenues over expenses of about $7.2 million, which will be, following past practice, will be transferred at the end of the year to support capital needs in the upcoming and subsequent years. Some of the key items in the budget include replacement of 12 police vehicles, 9 in-car cameras, 1 plow truck, 1 dump truck, 1 wheel loader, replacement of an emergency warning siren, replacement of the EMA emergency lights truck, and upgrades to the citizens emergency notification system. Other capital initiatives include a citizens portal, 311 system, a FOIA management system, downtown signage incentive program, Music in the plaza, including higher profile performers, 1 additional concert. Demolition of abandoned properties, planning services for the state campus redevelopment. Water projects include the meter replacement program with an improved customer portal, the 167th Street pump house. One of the tanks will get recoated, and lining of a 24-inch water main. Sanitary sewer projects include a post 7 lift station replacement. That's on Harlem Avenue, and the replacement of the lift station on 84th Avenue. Municipal building projects includes replacement of existing security cameras in various locations, as well as additional security cameras at new locations yet to be determined. Public safety, building, engineering, and architectural studies. Creation of capital reserve for fire station remodeling and construction. The electrical department includes the first phase of LED street light replacement. Street projects include additional contract for snow removal for Oak Park Avenue, street sign upgrades, Oak Park Avenue reconstruction engineering, phase 2, the extension of 191st Street from Harlem Avenue to Oak Park Avenue, pavement management program resurfacing, the Bannis pedestrian bridge construction, which is 100% grant funded. Flood control projects include construction of the downtown off-site detention pond, stormwater installation in Parkside, and stormwater management in Veterans Park. Public landscaping beautification includes the 3rd year of the tree replacement program as a result of the damage done by the emerald ash borer. The final phase of the LaGrange Road improvements, sprinkler and median landscape replacements along Harlem Avenue, and creation of a capital reserve for downtown plaza improvements. In the area of parking, the 80th Avenue parking, the north parking lot will receive some patching and sealing and resurfacing of Municipal Lot F, that is the lot by Subway, and parking lot repairs to various municipal buildings. One second here. Again, I kind of touched on this before. General fund revenues for the current year are projected to exceed the budget by about $555,000, which is about a little more than 1% over the budget. Budgeted expenditures are expected to be about 9% below what had been budgeted, or the year-end expenditures for the current fiscal year are expected to come in about 9% below what had been budgeted. In the water and sewer fund, the projected revenues are projected to fall short of the budgeted revenues by about 1%, and the expenditures are going to overrun the budgeted expenditures, or I'm sorry, are below the projected expenditures are below the budget by about $1.2 million, or about 5.2%. The commuter parking lot fund for the current year, revenues are expected to exceed the budget by about $16,000, or 2.3%, and the budgeted expenditures, or the projected expenditures, will be below budget by about $158,000, or 37% below budget. Brian, I think
Yes, thank you, Brad. Before I open it up for public comment, are there any members of the board who wish to address the public hearing? Anyone from the staff care to comment? At this time, if there are any comments from the public, please step up and address the board.
Can we go back to the first slide, please, Treasurer? Who's ever handling that?
Ryan, the first slide, the second slide, there, that one. Thank
There
you.
you go, yeah. I think I understood you to say that all of the expenditures, proposed expenditures, are all positive. I'm looking at towards the bottom, the sewer. What did I say? I can't read that, so. Water and sewer construction.
Yes.
Projected ending cash balance, $2.4 million in the red. What happened there? How did we end up in the red that bad?
That is a construction fund. That is a capital fund. That is not a operating fund. The operating funds, the construction funds and capital funds, you will tend to accumulate money for several years and then expend it in a different.
Can you answer my question? No, you're going into, you're giving me an answer that really doesn't answer my question. I'm looking at the lines here. Expected beginning cash balance is $4.6 million. Projected revenues, $2.7 million. Budgeted expenses, $9.7, for a negative deficit of $2.4 million.
Peter?
What happened?
Peter, if I may.
Sure.
Brad, if I understand it correctly, some of our capital expenditures are what's included in that 9.7 that are going to be transfers from the 7.2 million carryover to pay for those? Is that correct?
I believe that is correct. Oh, I'm sorry. That includes the budget for the water meter replacement, which will actually be transferred from other sources.
Not the carryover of,
No.
not the cash balance remaining.
Correct. And that transfer that actually it will be an internal loan is not reflected on this schedule. I apologize for that.
I'm sorry, I'm missing your, please, can you direct it also over here? I'm not hearing what you're saying there, because I'm still not, I hear there's a transfer.
We've budgeted the expenditure for the water main replacement
Yeah.
in this account because it's a water fund account. The funds that will cover that expenditure are actually going to be an internal loan from other capital funds, and that transfer did not get reflected in this schedule. That would not be a negative balance at the end.
Why wouldn't that get handled before you present this budget to the public and to the boards here?
There's considerable work that goes into
Yeah, but
preparing
that's
this
your
budget,
job.
and I
understand that.
apologize. A mistake. We're all human here. Mistakes will happen.
So where are these funds going to come from to help with the water, with the sewer main not the water meter replacement? You said you're going to be transferring funds. Where are the funds coming from?
That's probably going to come out of the capital improvements fund. The board has yet to determine where the source of that funding at this point.
When will that be determined, or when would that be determined? I guess my bigger problem here, my bigger question is, when are the folks who have the issues with the water meters going to get taken care of and going to get that problem taken care of, so I don't have to read about it in the papers throughout the Chicago area?
It's a policy question.
The water meter effort is being reviewed by council right now because it's a subject of litigation. We expect to have what I think you're asking for, which is resolution of those residents that had problems. I spoke to one today in the office, so this is an ongoing effort, and I would expect that when that report comes from them within the next couple of weeks, I know that the water superintendent's already been working on proceduralizing a methodology for a resolution of those problems such that it's consistent. That's been my objective, is to have consistent resolution procedures in place so that if neighbor A has a problem, the same formulas apply to neighbor B, and
Sure.
it's consistent across the board. That's the objective.
Is it planned in this year's budget that those, regardless of whatever the litigation is, but are the funds there, have they been transferred properly, or will they be transferred properly to get this taken care of for those residents this year?
Yes,
This budget year?
that's my objective. As soon as As soon as we have the methodology in place, the funds will be available to make everyone whole that needs to be. Absolutely.
Okay, appreciate it. Just one other comment, if I may, to the board
Yes.
as we're going forward. It appears that we're going to have some vacancies here come the May 1st appointments for the staff positions here at the town. I would ask the board to seriously consider any, and I know we're talking about getting an internal auditor for $100 or $100 and whatever it is, $100,000 a year for the office. I would ask the board to consider that any expenses that are made are neutral to the budget, i.e., if there's an expenditure of $100,000, we need to find $100,000 in savings. I'm reading some of these salaries, and I know some of the gossip that's been at some of the board meetings is blown out of proportion, but then you see some of the contracts that have been given to some of the staff. But to see a town like ours have a village manager and 2 assistants, a planning director and a deputy planning director, all at some nice numbers, I would seriously ask the board, or I would like to ask the board to seriously consider that any expenditures going forward on staff are basically expense neutral, so that we are not just adding on $100,000 onto our budget to add an internal auditor. That what we are doing is we are looking for $100,000 in savings, and we're knocking out another position to get that internal auditor, if that's the direction that the board wishes to go in and hire an internal auditor. Just a thought there, if you will.
Appreciate the comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. I have a question. I know it's in draft form and I guess riddled with some mistakes still, but why is this not on the village website?
The entire budget would be, or the proposed budget would be posted between first and second reading. Tonight would be first reading, second reading would be the next board meeting. So the entire 300 and whatever pages, I believe, is that correct, Brad, would be available?
327 some odd pages, yes.
That will be available between first and second reading?
We can make it available if that is your wish.
So it's going to be up in the next couple days?
Is that, we can do that, right? Yes.
Okay, and do you vote on it on the next board meeting?
It's up for first reading tonight, and it will be up for second reading at the next meeting.
Okay, and I apologize. I'm still a little bit rusty in my parliamentary. Does it go up, so it's first reading, second reading, then the vote at the following meeting?
No, it's 2 readings.
So it's voted on right after the second reading,
Yes,
is that right?
that's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So wouldn't usually, like this time last year, when did it go up? After the first reading? How many days?
When did what go up?
The budget.
When was it?
The budget is...
When was it put on the website?
Well, I don't know that it was put on the website. It was available.
Well, then why,
inspection.
okay, it's 2016.
Yes. thanks.
Okay, it's fairly easy to put a PDF up on the website. Why wasn't, I know it's still in draft form, but why isn't it up now? We could have been looking at it before this meeting and had better questions instead of trying to squint and see, like, what is that? I don't know. You know what I mean? Not all of us can come off our jobs to come to the village hall and read this, okay? Some of us have to work to pay for the property taxes, you see? So I couldn't come off my job to go and read it, okay? So I don't think it's too much to ask, even though it's in draft form, to put it on the website before the first reading. Am I crazy?
Thanks for your comment.
You're welcome.
I'm going to have to get on my tippy toes. So the one question I have is really just more around the budgeting procedure. So when we talk about the budget, this is less about the treasurer, it's more just about the individual operating entities inside of the village. How is the budget constructed? Is it a bottoms-up budget? And what incentive do the individual functional leaders have to save us money? So in other words, there's 2 ways that a budget can work. It can work as either we use it or we lose it, meaning whatever capital sits there we either use it again this year, or we're going to lose it, or we create an incentive for the functional leaders to actually say, how can we operate really effectively, but also in a way that gets the best rate of return? So I'm just curious procedurally if maybe some of the trustees could talk to us about how specifically each one of the line items in the budget is derived, and if there's any incentive inside of the functional areas to save money, even if the budget were, as an example, larger the year before.
Well, the one thing I can say, it's Matt, right?
Yes.
Yeah. The manager was given direction by the board to try to maintain a zero increase levy. Each department was tasked with trying to make that happen. Obviously, certain costs increase regardless of what efforts are made in terms of potentially health care costs. Various personnel costs would automatically be going up based on contracts that were agreed to already for longer that term than just the cycle of the budget. I would say each department would be tasked with the duty of trying to stay within that zero increase budget and still be as effective as they can possibly be. I don't know that I can speak to your direct management style question, but that's essentially the message that was conveyed from the board to the manager is to keep we want to keep a zero increase levy.
I do appreciate that. I mean, from a business perspective, the way that I typically approach it is that if my revenues are increasing dramatically, then I would expect my expenses potentially to. But if my revenues are not increasing dramatically, I may even consider or contemplate what specific strategies can we have to actually reduce our expenditures in certain areas. And not to saying that we should do that, but I guess what I'm curious about is there any incentive for any one of the individual functional leaders? In other words, you know, if I don't use the money, am I simply shooting myself in the foot because it's not going to be available to me in the future? Is there any individual incentive to put the money back into a pot? As an example, if everybody were optimizing their individual budgets and something like the water meters happen, but because we've been running our discrete areas as cost effectively as possible, we may have created a slush fund of ways to remedy that situation. And so the question I have is, at the individual personnel level, is there any element of incentive not to spend the money?
I think what you're, at least part of what, and I may not be able to address all of yours, a lot of the budget that you've got presented here and capital, I mean, understand, most of the money we spend here is on personnel. It's people. So if the chief is down people, and right now we've got a couple of people that are on leaves, what happens is his budget goes up actually because they're already being paid leave, but now we've got to cover those shifts or those hours, so now there's overtime. And likewise with the fire service, you don't want to risk not paying people just to save money. Public Works, once again, is the other area of expenditure is driven by largely demand, and we've gone through a number of phases in terms of trying to insource and outsource various functions. Actually, some of the things in the budget today are to change some of the way we do business. So, for instance, when the chief says, hey, I can have non-sworn officers do some of the more mundane things, that's how we're trying to do it. You're absolutely right, and it's an ongoing and it's a conscious effort on every department head's part to try to do that. Now, are they incented to do that? I'd feel pretty badly if I started to say if the chief cuts 10 officers, we're going to give him a 20% pay raise. I don't think that's probably in the public's best interest. But I do think that there are evaluations and other things in place that attempt to reward, communicate positive behaviors, of which saving money is clearly one. But I think you have to do it in a cautious fashion. Unfortunately, once again, approximately 2/3 of our budget is salaries. And the rest of it, to a large degree, are capital projects that are carried forward. If we don't do the flood control project, it's the residents that get a flood in their basement that pay for that. So there's a balance here, and I think you have to put it in context as well. This village has just come out of a recession. We've cut staffing levels to under where they were pre-recession, and we're trying to preserve a level of fiscal conservatism that reflects an appropriate amount of spend for the demanded services of our public. And understand, being in the service business, and I've done this my whole life, not necessarily in government, but other services, that for everything you take away, there's usually another impact. And there's ways you try to get more efficient about buying insurance, about, some of the things that are perhaps a little less directly related to services. But it's a caution, and once again, to the points that were made earlier, some of these are made under contract. The labor, and when 66% of your budget is labor, and you've got union contracts that dictate, for instance, what the police will be making, what Public Works will be making, those are not exactly flexible.
No, I think it's fair, but it's not different than some of the dilemmas that most of us face in private enterprise, right? Which is we actually have to account for the reality. When we talk about, if we could, what was the total budget amount?
Total budget, all funds is $144,510,160.
So what's 66% of 144 million?
Well, you really can't take 66% of that because that includes the capital funds. And actually, Dave and Mike, Matt, I'm sorry, personnel costs for our general fund are actually about 61%. So we're a little below that norm of 67%.
Well, that's fantastic. Okay, so, but my point is the numbers are not trivial, even if it is the 33% remaining. They're pretty significant.
Yes.
The other one, though, was simply around how the priorities are derived. So how the priorities for the money are derived. And I know we saw, 9 additional police vehicles, et cetera.
There's replacement. Those aren't new. Those are replacement vehicles. I think all the vehicles that you've seen here are all replacement of rolling stock in place. They're not just...
And I'm not saying we should get rid of those. So that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, how are they derived in terms of priority? How do we derive what the priority of the budgeted?
Actually, I'll defer to our Public Works Director, because there's unlike the way it's been in years gone by, and I'm going back, because I can go back, probably about 8 years, there was a methodology put in place to be able to manage the turn of vehicles. As vehicles got better and started to last longer, we found, for instance, back in probably when we started the personal squad program, they had about a life of about probably 3 to 4 years, and you'd turn them out.
Dave, I'm sorry, I'm not talking about like the individual methodology for the police vehicles. I was just saying from a budget perspective, right? You have a very large set or bucket of money.
Sure.
You have discrete functional areas, right? How are the priorities derived around the allocations for that? Because we can see there's, some that are much greater.
Okay.
So is that what I was trying to get at is are the trustees playing any role in how the actual buckets are derived and which ones get top priority in the budget season?
Absolutely. I'll point to my right. We talked about a question around the helipad and about $500 million, and one of the trustees basically said this is one of the areas that may likely not be there. It was Trustee Vandenberg. And we said, okay, let's turn it into a maintenance function instead of a set aside of $500 million. This budget, I don't know how many days we've spent on it, but I mean, this has been...
It was an 8-hour session on a Saturday, I know that.
This is a fairly rigorous and clearly trying to get people oriented to it that haven't been through it before. There were tough questions asked to do just what you're suggesting.
So one recommendation would be, you have some logic behind it. We see the numbers.
Oh, yeah.
But would be really helpful for the citizens if you simply said, the trustees believe these to be the priorities, and here's the reason why. And specifically, here's why we're actually putting more emphasis on this one in this season or in this year, so that we understand the logic and how it actually supports our city for the future. The second piece is, I understand it's a municipal environment, but people operate under motivation and incentive to a certain extent. And I'm not saying we cut people from positions, but we drive utilization and we incent people to do more. And typically what we find is we get great results when we do that and we spend less. So that's all.
Thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
It is historical question for the clerk first. I'm sure you can answer, Pat. How many years has it been since citizens have actually stood up at a budget hearing and asked the board questions?
Too long. The answer was too long. My guess is that this board appreciates, because quite often we would have a budget hearing, there'd be nobody. Or there'd be people there, but no one would ask. So,
And I'll just say, I can never remember anybody coming in, so I'd like to compliment the board and the residents of the village. Mr. Mayor, you talked about a little bit about police staffing. As I go through the budget here, that brings up, there's a certain amount of money that's brought in from court fees that, as I look through here, I notice is, when you're only talking tens of thousands of dollars, might not seem substantial. But what I think is kind of troubling, and what you touched on, is, in the budget it's mentioned the level of our staffing and activity of our officers in the field may be a factor in this tens of thousands of dollars in decrease. And I'm wondering how many police officers, sworn police officers, did we have in 2005 and every year coming forward to today?
I would defer to the police chief. We're at a disadvantage. We're not at the hall, so we don't have our computers and everything else at our fingertips to give you all that information, but if the treasurer would be...
Steve, that information is found in statistical tables within our audit reports that are on the internet. You can find that information.
All right, but we are down numbers of sworn police officers, correct?
Yes.
And apparently we're down in field activity, and I'm wondering if anybody can offer an explanation of why we're down in field activity. Because that's what protects these folks out in the neighborhoods, is field activity. So I'm just asking, why are we down in field activity?
I'm not quite sure what you mean by field activity, if it's officer-initiated arrests, things like that, traffic tickets. What we do is we have minimum staffing out, and if we need to hire back officers to make that minimum staffing, there's, for instance, in the afternoon shift, 12 cars out there. We endeavor to put 12 cars out there. The officer activity and things like that, that's all generated on the calls. Sometimes we get less calls in the course of a year, but they're much more complicated now because we're dealing with all kinds of social issues, and you just don't, go into a family dispute and tell people to quiet down and walk away. Sometimes it's an all-day endeavor to try and resolve problems. So calls are taking longer, but the bottom line is for the people out in the village, it's the minimum number of squad cars we do endeavor to make minimum staffing. So what the officers are doing, that changes a little bit from year to year.
And when you say minimum staffing, when you say minimum staffing, you and the board have decided that there's a minimum number of officers out there that you feel can handle the calls that you get. Does that comport with, for instance, FBI statistics, suggestions on number of officers per 100,000 residents or things like that?
The minimum staffing's been set for a while. It takes all those things into consideration, but mostly it can be some science, but a lot of it is how long do we want to make people wait for a police officer to come? It's very, very difficult to figure out how many police officers you're going to need on a typical day, because there's no such thing as a typical day. You can have 12 cars out there, and it's very, very quiet. You can have 12 cars out there, and we're stacking calls. It just depends on the day. So we try and do what we feel will give people service, safety for the officers, safety for the citizens, be able to respond to calls.
Thank you, Chief. And also looking out through the budget, this is probably like the third or the fourth year that I've heard that the tax levy has remained flat. Correct? And that's just a lump sum of money, that's not percentage, a lump sum of money that the village says to the county, this is what we need, put that levy out there and give us this money because this is what we need to operate, correct? That percentage, according to the budget now, has gone down from 42% to 34%, but that has been made up, apparently, by the home rule sales tax.
Yes.
That goes from 33.5 up to 37.4.
Correct.
Now, I looked at my tax bill. I think a lot of other people looked at their tax bill. And the village keeps saying about 12 to 13% of the entire tax bill is what actually goes to the village. So in round numbers, my share to the village is about $650 per year. We're going back to 2014. When you gentlemen, the older members of the board, instituted the home rule sales tax, we were told that impacts about $123 a year. So rather than my property tax go up from $650 to $773, I'm still paying $773. But that
Let me make a correction here.
Okay.
The beauty of a home rule sales tax, or any sales tax, and while we're probably not the stellar community, but let's just say a community like Orland Park, other people from outside your community are paying those sales taxes, not you, as you would if we were to levy those numbers through the property tax bill. So we're fortunate enough to have, while not as strong, say, a retail base as an Orland Park does, we do better than most of our peer groups because I think we're the 13th, 16th highest sales tax generator.
We're better than Arlington Heights.
Yeah, we're better than Arlington Heights, better than Lombard, better than Downers Grove. So our sales tax base allows us to essentially, because of the way it is in Illinois. Now, if you were in streamlined sales tax or Florida and some other places, it'd be different. But the way that they decide, legislatively years ago, is that the area that is where the sale is consummated is the area that gets the benefit of the sales tax. So it's provided us with basically a chance to gather tax dollars. And if you recall, the home rule sales tax was because we weren't going to be able to maintain our pavement management program because motor fuel taxes have ceased and dropped. You were going to have the emerald ash borer tree replacement program that had to get done. So those were some of the driving forces here, is that when you've got revenue streams that are going down from external forces such as the state, there was a resolve of this board to be able to keep that and attempt to balance that portfolio of revenues. The ideal is always to have a third, a third, a third, a third from income tax, a third from sales tax, a third from property taxes. The numbers you cited show how that had grown almost disproportionate, whereas 42% property tax. Our objective was to get those pies in more equal proportion.
Okay, and I think that's laudable, and I applaud the board for taking that money from the outsiders, from those rich people in Deerfield and Inverness and the city of Chicago. But I'm told by you, when you were the head of finance, that impacts me $123 a year. We're told, we're asked, shop Tinley. We like to shop Tinley. That means it's going to cost us $123 more per year. So I look at my property taxes at $650 in round numbers that go to the village. I add on $123, and that's about 19% more out of my pocket that I'm paying to the village. So I'm asking, take that money from everybody else, but like a lot of these towns, they reward their residents. When they say shop Orland Park, what they do is their residents shop Orland Park and then they refund the residents the home rule sales tax. Yes, the bottom line is take it from them, and that might sound very mean, but you increased our liability to this village 19%, and we see no incentive to shop Tinley Park. I'm paying 19% more. There's no incentive for me not to stop in New Lenox and Orland Park and buy whatever I need on my way home. Has there been any thought to refunding to the residents that 19%, to reward us for shopping Tinley Park?
I'll let the grandfather of the abatement program talk at this point.
Yeah, you're right, and I think the good point that's being made here is that in those communities, which in metropolitan Chicago, let's say there's 15 of us, not much more in the whole state, 25 of us, that have more money coming in through sales tax than the average community, those quite often do one of two ways. They mail checks back, and that's politically very popular, but that's what happens. And if I got a check, I'd be happy to get it too. Or we abate the levy. And Brad, off the top of your head, and this is what we've done every single year for over 25 years. What's the average abatement in this town? Back to our taxpayer, lowering what the property tax bill could be.
Well, I don't, unfortunately, I'm not. No, it is on. I don't have that information with me, but it is, I believe, somewhere in the neighborhood of about in a range of $150 to $250 per property owner, per homeowner. It's more for a business. And the abatement last year was just shy of, I believe, $6 million.
So that's what I was looking for.
Which is far greater than any amount of money that any of these other communities have committed to a rebate program.
So, and where does the abatement money come from? Because when I see the board approving abating this and abating that, it's from the water and sewer fund, it's from this fund, it's from that fund, it's not from the sales tax fund. So that brings up the point then, you're also charging us for water and sewer, and I think a lot of people are complaining about excess water, so you have excess money in the water and sewer fund, and I think the last time I looked, the abatements out of the water and sewer fund, about $1 million came out of there, which is what we're paying to the village anyway. It's not abating our sales tax to shop Tinley.
We're not going to abate sales tax. Why would we want to do that, Steve?
You're talking about abating our property tax.
That's what you want to abate.
Right. Where does the money come from that abates the property taxes? It comes from other funds
Sales
we pay
tax.
into.
Sales tax, most of it.
You just said it doesn't come from sales tax.
No. It's a terminology. We're going to agree on this. You get more sales tax because more folks come in town and buy things and pay it. From that, we take the excess sales tax and abate the property tax bill, and you say, how do you do that? The best way to do it is at tax time. We take all the bond issues that are outstanding, we take the expenses associated with those, and we literally, and let me give you an example. Let's say we've got $10 to pay on highway construction bond issues, because we built some highways in the last 10 years. We'll abate literally only tax for 8, taking $2 off the top of that. Now, I can send you tomorrow or whenever you like, or you can come by, anybody can, and you're welcome, and I'll walk you through how these abatements have worked and how it has reduced your property tax. Now, there's also some other ways besides sales tax, to be honest. I'm not trying to be dishonest, but there's other ways besides sales tax, but that's the big one. Every now and then, we'll get a grant. Let's say we thought we're going to have to put in a water system somewhere, and the federal government gives us a grant. We'll abate that difference down, but don't count on that. That's not a way to run a railroad.
Asking, Pat, is what fund, as you read through these board agendas, what fund does the abatement come from? It never says,
oh yes it does,
the sales tax fund. It comes from water and sewer, TIF districts, capital improvement funds, which is money that we have paid into anyway.
You'd have to go back, and we can do this with you. You have to go back, take a look at the revenue streams, and the mayor said there's 3 primary ones, and overall there might be 15, like literally when you pave to park, there's a revenue stream in the parking lots. You have to go back to those revenue streams and see how much is needed to support the stream, keeping the parking lot up, and the difference. And that difference will go into the reserve accounts which is the good point that was being made earlier. And I'd be happy to, any of us would, to walk you through this. It goes into the reserve accounts. Our reserve accounts, by the way, is what keeps us at AA plus.
Okay, and where does the money for the reserve accounts come from? You just said, for instance, the parking lot. I pay for parking, so I'm paying to put it into parking to abate property
But the
taxes.
overwhelming majority is the sales tax. Believe me, you can game this. I'm happy to both discuss it with you and then debate you. But it's going to come from overwhelmingly the sales tax. Please lock in on that.
So you're telling me when I get all the documents, it's going to show that tax abatements come from sales tax?
And other places, yes.
Surtax is a big one, the set-asides for surtax.
I'll be happy to sit down with you and see how much sales tax money goes into different accounts to abate. Thanks.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any chance we can get that backlight turned down or dimmed? On our side, you can't see the board.
Staff will do that. Thank you.
I hope nobody up here lights up.
There?
Is that better? Okay.
Are there any other comments on the budget? At this point, I'd look for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The hearing is closed.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to move to item number 2, approval of the agenda. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as written?
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 3, approval of minutes of the special village board meetings held on March 1st, 2016 and on March 22nd, 2016. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4, approval of the consent agenda items. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk.
Item 4, it'll be on roll call, consent agenda. A, consider a request from the Tinley Park Sertoma Club to conduct a Tag Day fundraiser on Friday, September 9th and Saturday, September 10th, 2016 at certain intersections in the village of Tinley Park. B, consider a request from People's Animal Welfare Society of Tinley Park, known as PAWS, to conduct a Tag Day fundraiser on Saturday, June 25th and Sunday, June 26th, 2016 at certain intersections in the village of Tinley Park. C, consider a request from St. Jude, Chicago to conduct a Tag Day fundraiser on Saturday, May 28th, 2016 and Saturday, June 18th, 2016. D, consider a request from Tinley Park Chamber of Commerce to conduct a raffle through June 30th, 2016 with the winners drawn that day at the Odyssey Country Club. E, consider proclaiming March 29th, 2016 as Welcome Home Vietnam Veteran Day in the village of Tinley Park. In case you wondered, we passed it. F, payment of impact fees in the amount of $400 to Consolidated High School District 230 to be paid from the escrow fund. And G, payment of outstanding bills in the amount of $1,031,334.74 as listed on the vendor board approval reports dated March 24th and April 1st, 2016.
Does anybody on the board care to remove any of these items from the consent agenda? Seeing as there are none, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Roll call on number 4, item 4. Trustee Maher.
Yay.
Trustee Grady.
Yay.
Trustee Penito. Trustee Vandenberg.
Yes.
Trustee Yunker.
Yay.
Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 5, swearing in for officers Jeffrey Graves and Justin, you're going to hurt me on this one, Rzutko. Am I close?
Gentlemen, if you'd come up to the front, and the mayor and the public safety chair would join me, and the police chief. Justin, if you'd stand in front of me and raise your right hand.
difficult.
I, Justin Rizzuto,
I, Justin Rizzuto,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the ordinances of the Village of Tinley Park,
the ordinances of the Village of Tinley Park,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and I will faithfully discharge
the duties of a police officer
the duties of a police officer
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Jeffrey, if you would raise your right hand. I, Jeffrey R. Graves,
I, Jeffrey R. Graves,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the ordinances of the Village of Tinley Park,
the ordinances of the Village of Tinley Park,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of police officer
of police officer
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
One more. Jeffrey? Please repeat after me. On my honor, I will never betray my badge, my character, or the public trust. I will always have the courage to hold myself and others accountable for our actions. I will always uphold the Constitution, my community, and the agency I serve. Okay, Justin? On my honor, I will never betray my badge,
On my honor, I will never betray my badge,
my integrity,
my integrity,
my character, or the public trust.
my character, or the public trust.
I will always have the courage to hold myself and others accountable
I will always have the courage to hold myself and others accountable
for our actions.
for our actions.
I will always uphold the Constitution,
I will always uphold
my community,
my community
and the agency I serve.
and the agency I serve.
Introductions? Do you want to make some introductions of family while we've got you here?
I have my dad in the front row, my mother, and my brothers in my here.
And my mom Janet and my dad Ralph over there.
Welcome aboard, gentlemen. Thank you. Appreciate it. Good luck with the rest of the training. Okay, thank you. Item number 6, Trustee Maher adopting for public hearing for the TIF.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This time I'd ask the board to consider for adoption ordinance number 2006-0-010, calling for a public hearing and a joint review board meeting to consider the designation of a redevelopment project area and the approval of a redevelopment plan and project for the Village of Tinley Park Legacy Tax Increment Financing District.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. In November of 2015, the village initiated the process to review the feasibility of creating a TIF district, including the property commonly known as the Panduit ABC Supply Ridgeland Avenue project area. The village has made available the eligibility report and redevelopment plan and project documents for the proposed TIF district on its website. The ordinance would call for a scheduling of a joint review board meeting on Friday, April 22nd, 2016 at 3 p.m. in the Village Carlson Center to review the documents. Additionally, this ordinance would set the public hearing for this legacy tax increment financing district on Tuesday, June 7th, 2016 at 8 p.m., tentatively scheduled in the Village boardroom.
Thank you. This item is on, up for adoption. Anybody from the board care to comment? Anybody from the public care to comment? Seeing as there are none, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Item number 6 on final, ordinance 010. Trustee Maher.
Yay.
Trustee Grady.
Yay.
Trustee Panito. Trustee Vandenberg.
Yay.
Trustee Yunker.
Yay.
Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 7, Trustee Vandenberg.
Thank you. This is a first reading this evening. I move to consider resolution number 2016-R-007. I make a motion to remove this item from the table.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Again, we're going to be waiving first reading this evening to adopt this resolution. Again, this is to move consider resolution number 2016-R-007, approving a final plat of subdivision for the Brookside Meadows PUD, Phase 2, located generally north of LaPorte Road and west of Long Meadow Drive, and within the Brookside Meadows Plan Unit development.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. This item was tabled at the March 1st, 2016 Village Board meeting due to requirements of the intergovernmental agreement between the Village of Tinley Park and the Village of Mokina, which required the final plat and final engineering to be approved by the Village of Mokina prior to consideration by the Village of Tinley Park. The final plat and final engineering were approved by Mokina at their March 28, 2016 meeting. Mokina is also a signatory on the final plat. Paula, is there anything I'm missing here?
The only other comments, if you want to advance the slides, Brian. This was approved on the 28th by the Village of Mokina, both the engineering and the final plat. This is Phase 2 of Brookside Meadows 45-acre PUD. It was originally approved in 2006 along with a preliminary plat. The final plat came before the Plan Commission in February and was unanimously approved. And as you can see from that slide and the next slide, they are consistent. They're in general conformance with the preliminary plat. The applicant has asked for the waiving of the first reading because of the length of time it takes for ComEd to get the electrical installed, and he's run out of homes to sell in Phase 1, and he's anxious to move on to Phase 2.
Do the makers of the motions in the second agree to a waiver of first reading on this particular item?
I do.
Yes.
Thank you. This item is up for adoption with waiver of first reading. Is there anybody from the board that would like to comment? Anybody from the public that would care to comment? Let the record reflect there were none. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Item 7 on final, resolution 007. Trustee Maher.
Yay.
Trustee Grady.
Yay.
Trustee Vandenberg.
Yay.
Trustee Yunker.
Yay.
Motion carries. Item number 8, Trustee Vandenberg.
Thank you. Again, for first reading this evening, I move to consider ordinance number 2016-0-018, granting variations from the required side yard setback and from the allowable even gutter encroachment to allow for an addition at 16412 Ironwood Drive for purposes of a third garage and laundry room addition for the Danka family.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Our petitioners, Anthony and Jill Danka, have submitted a variation request that was previously not recommended for the approval by the ZBA in July of 2015. The ZBA's recommendation was not forwarded to the village board at the request of the petitioners. Mr. and Mrs. Danka submitted a new petition in February 2016. The proposed plans and variation request did not change from the earlier petition. However, additional findings of fact were provided. The petition requests 2 variations: a 3-foot side yard setback variation, where the side yard setback requirement is 8 foot, and 2, a 1-foot 8-inch variation from the allowable eave gutter encroachment, where 3 feet in the maximum encroachment permitted for eaves and gutters into the required side yard setback. Excuse me. These variations would allow the petitioners to construct a one-story addition to the existing home at a 5-yard setback from the north side property line, and would allow the proposed eaves and gutters to be 3 foot 4 inches from the north side property line.